Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Sam Cobbs, the CEO of First Place for You.
Hello. Thank you all for being here with us tonight. Many of you have been with us from the beginning, so it feels like family in the room. I actually want to talk to you about family. A few weeks ago, I was at a luncheon honoring young people who had been selected for a prestigious public affairs fellowship. And each person, again and again, got up and they thanked their family for getting them to the point that they were today. It reminded me of why we do what we do at First Place for Youth. We work with young people who don't have family in the traditional sense. The reason we exist is because we all know this fundamental truth. Families support us, families are there for us, and families push us when we need pushing. Without families, we can still succeed. But the journey is often much harder. The doors we need to open get stuck. Sometimes it's not clear which door to go through, or what you're supposed to do when you get to the other side. Now, I'm quite a bit older than the young people that we work with at First Place. But I'm not so old that I don't remember what it's like to go up against those doors. Now, I bet like most of you, I wasn't born in the Bay Area. I grew up in Indianola, a small town in the Mississippi Delta. Plenty of the older kids that I knew went on to college, but after graduating, many of them came back and went right to work for the biggest employer in town, a warehouse factory that stocked all of the super value supermarkets in the South. So by the time I got to Jackson State, I wasn't too impressed with that whole college thing. But I had a lot of fun. So much fun, I didn't bother going to class. By the end of 3 years, I had about 9 units to my name, and they asked me not to come back. I was at school, but I wasn't in school. So I went home and started working at the factory. My job was to field orders for the supermarkets. Everything was timed. I would have 6 minutes to load 6 50-pound bags of potatoes from the cooler to the truck. At that time, maybe I weighed about 120. Around that time, a door opened up to me. My father moved to Oakland for work, and I went to visit him. For the first time in my life, I met black professionals. I met former mayor of Oakland, Ella Lou Harris. I met Charles Duval, who owned the majority of the McDonald's in Oakland at the time. I met an African-American doctor. Now, when people were calling him doctor, I must admit, I thought it was because he was a basketball player like Dr. J. He drove the nicest car, had the prettiest wife, and he wasn't a nerd. I thought, this is pretty interesting. Maybe there is something to this education thing. So in my early 20s, the same age as many of the young people we serve, I moved out west. But then my family and I had a falling out. I was on my own. I was enrolled in Laney College, but the income I scrounged together from temp work, cleaning gutters, and a part-time job at Richmond's Park and Rec wasn't enough to cover rent. For the first year that I was in school, I was homeless. I slept in my car, which I parked not too far from here. I crashed with friends when I could. Through this time in my life, I don't remember feeling afraid. I had enough confidence in myself to know that I would get through it. But I do remember feeling deeply embarrassed that I was living out of my car, that I could not afford to buy textbooks. I was embarrassed to be standing and applying for food stamps. I was outraged when they turned me down. At the time, they told me to receive this benefit, I needed to quit college, even though I knew education was the best shot I had to never stand in that line again. So that was a door that shut on me, but it allowed another door to open in my mind. The understanding that policies, including ones created with great intentions, have unintended consequences. They can be trapdoors that people fall through instead of bridges across tough times. I didn't know it back then, but standing there in that line was the beginning of my commitment to the First Place for Youth Way. We empower individuals through direct service, but we equally drive to scale that power by advocating for policy change that will help many more young people become independent, strong adults. What I learned in those years when I was cut off from my family is that there are good people out there who will step in and step up in your life. They may not be blood, but they can become your family when you need them the most. Through my parks job, I met Carolyn Bolton. She was the #2 person at the local Boys and Girls Club at the time. She pushed hard to secure a part-time job for me at the club, but she went above and beyond that. She used her network. She loaned me money to buy books. She used her network to help me land my first apartment. She invited me to her house on holidays. Until I met Carolyn, I felt like it was me against the world. She was the one that I thanked in my heart when I finally had the keys to my first true home, my first true place in my hands. As you know, at First Place, we make a big deal out of keys because we know keys mean so much more than having your own place to live. They symbolize the faith people have in you, the work you put into earning that trust, the rock-hard belief you must have in yourself to have gotten thus far. Mr. Appleberry, my counselor at Laney, took a chance on me, which is how I got my first experience with the foster care system, working as an overnight staff at a group home in East Oakland. Under my mentors, Ann Stanton and Mike Kennedy at Larkin Street Youth Services, I strengthened my conviction that homeless shelters were not an exit plan for foster care. Kids would show up at our shelter with all of their worldly possessions in plastic bags. Our job was not to replace those bags with sturdier luggage. That would be like rolling out a better welcome mat to a trapdoor. We needed to pressure policymakers to invest in transitional programs that arm foster youth with the practical knowledge and emotional support they need to thrive on their own. How do we do this? By building a culture of high expectations. Because we have to believe in young people before we can expect them to believe in themselves. How do we do this? By teaching kids how to unlock doors to their future. If you prepare youth the right way, by meeting them where they're at, but not expecting them to stay there. you build their resiliency to make it in the real world. How do we do this? By running First Place like a business, when the return on investment is the success of our young people. The fact is, our programs are not too different from what they were when Amy and Deanne started First Place 15 years ago. But we have sharpened our intentionality. By that I mean, we're making and taking a much more disciplined approach to make sure every kid receives the best possible services, that staff receive the best possible training and support across the board. We measure our impact with an eye on outcomes. If there's a secret sauce to the First Place formula, it is this. Charvette said in the video you saw earlier, First Place and the people in this room are like family. We may not be made of the same genetic material. We may not have grown up in the same house, but we're family. Because like family, you have nurtured us, you have been a part of our successes, as well as our struggles. I'm the proud father of 2-year-old twin daughters. I know the support they need now is going to look a lot different than it will 5 or 10 years from now. The same is true for First Place. We are evolving. We are growing because we believe we are onto something that can benefit many more transition age foster youth. But we also know we won't succeed without support from you, our family. It's time. It's time to do more. It's time to expect more. It's time to open new doors. And please know that you are the key. Thank you and have a terrific time tonight.